Another big change in that 20s, 30s period is the whole direction of commerce. Certainly you have great potential new commerce. I mean, now, you know, most of you would have been local farmers circa 1810. You know, you grew your crops. What was the point of growing too much because you couldn't do with it? I mean, it was like having zucchini in the summertime. I mean, what can you do? It's not like you can send it somewhere because there's no way of really sending it anywhere economically. What was available was to put it out on the Seneca River, float it down the Oswego and out to Lake Ontario, and go that way to Canada. Now, the people who advocate for the Erie Canal, one of their main justifications is to redirect that traffic because political allegiance tends to follow commercial traffic. So if people here in Bucksville, before it's Port Byron, are dealing, in this case, with Kingston, Upper Canada, maybe they're not going to kind of, you know, maybe they're going to start leaning that way. And certainly during the War of 1812, there was, you know, some ambivalence up here. So here's a newspaper from Auburn, 1819, just before the canal opens, and it's still advertising stores in Canada for produce, for flour, pork, and potash. That changes big time with the Erie Canal. So this map from the mid-century, you can see a funnel, right? The red line is to mark the reach, the economic reach of the Erie Canal as a shipping point. So this giant funnel is coming right through Port Byron and into New York City. That redirects a whole part of the country this way. Now, if the canal hadn't come through, just imagine this funnel that way, down the Mississippi, which was the only other viable way. That could have really made a difference circa 1861. So Erick Matson comes from Connecticut. I hope you remember his name after this talk. He becomes the local canal superintendent, and he also becomes the postmaster for Bucksville. He later, just to get to the end of the story, he only stays around here until the 1830s. He's in Missouri in 1836. A slave owner out in Missouri. Missouri still allowed slavery. He becomes head of the local militia. And one of his first duties is involved in what are called the Mormon Wars in Missouri in 1838. And guess who he's fighting? Okay, which is interesting to me because they would have known each other. And I wonder what that was like. Matson going, oh, that Young, or Young going, stay away from Matson. So Matson's not only the superintendent in charge of maintenance, he's also the toll collector. The collector's office was right here in the village, at least up until about 1830, when it gets moved to Montezuma with the completion of the Cayuga-Seneca Canal. That was a definite blow to Port Byron. So Matson used a rate of toll. This is from 1825. You charge so much for whatever was being carried per mile. He is here when Clinton comes through in 1825 with the Great Wedding of the Waters program. I'll just say outright, I think it's him who renames the village Port Byron. Okay. I don't think Byron is, Frank Byron up on Baptist Hill Road. I think it's Lord George Byron, the great English poet. His death, he was carried in the Auburn paper, front page, though it took several months to get here. He died fighting for Greek independence. He was, in 1825, I bet you there were people here in the village who went, Byron? I mean, he didn't strike. Have any of you ever read his poetry, his poems? I mean, I have to admit, I can't make it through it. I mean, he's the epitome of the romantic writer and poet. Very, very romantic. And his lifestyle, you wouldn't want his daughter, you wouldn't want your daughter to go out with him. So I'll just leave it at that. And that was a known reputation in 1825. Nonetheless, he represented all the things that somebody like Matson wanted to proclaim. Byron was reaching out to a new world. He was reaching out to defend, to recapture Greek independence. He was traveling throughout Europe and the rest of the world, the Middle East, in the same way that Matson wanted the community here to think outside of, Mentz. That's speculation. I don't know that. And Mike is right to always keep correcting me on this. This is Byron as he's heading off to fight for Greek independence. Remember, anything dealing with Greece is a big thing here. You have these kind of little Parthenons all over upstate New York, these little farmhouses with columns. Well, we could go outside, right, just across the street. That harks back to a wish to emulate the democracies, so-called, of Greece. Since retiring, I have all sorts of time on my hands. So I've had a chance to go through those countless receipts by Erick Matson. And they're arranged in packets by year, several hundred for each year. And so the last one where he identifies a place, so this is December 12th, 1824, and it's still in Mentz. Mentz, at Mentz. Okay? It doesn't say Bucksville, he doesn't say Port Byron. It's December 12th, 1824. Payne, by the way, well, hold on to that thought. I'll tell you about Payne. Okay, a few months later, this is April 15th, 1825, he's now using the word Port Byron. And as far as I know, Mike, that's the earliest reference I've ever seen to Port Byron. There is an ad in the Auburn paper a week or two later saying Port Byron, but nothing earlier. Now, Byron dies in Greece, I think in April of 1824, so maybe it starts with an anniversary of his death. They may have started, his birth date was in January, maybe they decided to rename the town in January at the start of the year. But it's definitely within those few months that it goes from Bucksville, or in addition to Bucksville, it becomes Port Byron. It's possible that there are actually two little communities. So Matson clearly wants a new identity for the community, a sense that it's part of a greater world. Have you ever heard of Bolivar, New York? Okay, that's not too far from here. Bolivar, after Simon Bolivar, great Latin American independence fighter. We picked names like that at that time to reach out to express our commitment to freedom and democracy and liberation. Okay. Another clue. So this is actually December 1825, and it's a receipt by Matson to, I can't see it from here, Alfred James. It's a backdated receipt for the end of 1824, probably 1824. And it's for James for making a sign for the collector's office. I bet you what that sign says. Port Byron. Again, he's postmaster. He almost has the legal right to make that distinction because there's no incorporated community, there's no mayor or anything. So I bet you on his own, this is speculation, that's what happens, and it's a great example of how things...
Postmasters were allowed to name their post office.
Exactly.
Which was often not the name of the community. And they often named it after themselves or whatever was popular at the time. So that's and then the community name often became the name of the post office, just because that happened where we live. And Free Hollow had a post office
Exactly.
named Forest Home, and so it was the Forest Home post office in Free Hollow, and then after a while people just called it Forest Home. So.
Right. So, again, Mike's always correct and always challenging me that I don't really know this, but that's the line of thought, that, that's how I think that happens. I think it represents exactly the spirit that defines the 1820s, 1830s in Missouri. Okay, anti-masonry.